Welcome back to Simbright Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew a cupped inbuilt corset with inner lacing and zipper at the back. So you can see how beautiful this dress actually looks. So you can use an inner lacing and have a well snatched waist. So here you can see what we have in the picture. You can embellish the way you actually want to embellish and also have a perfect fitting for your dresses. So this is what I came out with. So I actually made a simple one so that even a beginner will be able to understand how to sew this dress. So here I have a cupped corset with my boning channels. I have my yoke right there. So this is the front piece of this dress. So you can actually design the way you want, and this is the inner lacing. So you can see it also have a zipper and is well snatched as well. So once you zip up, you have a perfect fitting and a snatched waist. So if this is what you want to learn in this class, I will encourage you to stay till the end of this tutorial. So you need to get your accurate bra cup size. So here I'm using size 40 bra cup, and you can see I made a dart to it. So I made a dart to make sure I have a well cupped corset. So you can see how I made my dart. I made it from top to bottom. So I'm taking my vertical measurements, bust point, chest line, waistline, hip line, and the full length. So the full length of this dress, if you have a tummy, I will encourage you to come down by 7 inches so that it snatches you very well from the waistline. So I'm going to repeat all those vertical lines again to have a straight line. So I'm ruling out those lines right away, and this is my shoulder line. Here is my shoulder, my chest, my bust point, under bust, waistline, and the full length. So my shoulder divide by 2, I marked it and marked it on the chest line, and I'm using 3.5 inches for my neckline width. I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to connect the 3.5 to 1 inch and connect the shoulder drop to the chest line. Now I want to get the midpoint of my arm side, so I'll mark the midpoint and go in by 0.75, then connect with a straight line. So on the chest area, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divide by 4. So I'll just mark my bust circumference divide by 4 and connect with my armhole rule. So right now we'll go over to the waist. I'm going to impute my waist measurement divide by 4. So you are using your waist measurement divide by 4. So I'm connecting with a dotted line because we'll still snatch this waist. On the hip is hip divide by 4. I connected from the waist to the hip line. So after that, the next thing we are going to do is to come down by the neckline by 3.5. So I'm using 3.5 by 3.5 for the front neckline. So now the next thing we want to do, we are using a bra cup. Take note. So since we are using a bra cup, I'm going to come in by 0.5 inch on the bust line for my bust bridge. So when making corsets, you need that bust bridge. Then I snatch my waist by 1 inch. So I came in from the natural waist by 1 inch. So I'm using a red marker to highlight that part. So I'm going to sit my bra cup right now, which I've darted. So I will sit it on the under bust area and trace out the shape of this bra cup. So make sure you sit it on the under bust area. So you can see how beautiful that darted bra cup is. It will give you a well cupped corset. So now I'm going to connect that part straight and come down with my armhole. So I will now come down with my armhole to touch that line I made at the bra cup area. Then you come up by 1.5 inch and connect to the down piece. So the front is ready. So we are going to draft the back pattern right now. So I'm extending my chest line, my waistline, and the full length of this corset. So actually the full length I used was 24 inches. I came down by 7 inches from my actual waist. So here is my chest line, my shoulder, waistline and the full length for the back. So I will take my shoulder divide by 2 from the center back and mark, and also mark it on the chest line. So the neck width is 3.5 inches and 1 inch for the back neckline. So I'm going to connect the back neckline right now. So next is to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder drop, and I'll connect with a slanted line. Then I'm going to connect a straight line to create my back armhole. So I'll divide it by 2 and come in by 1/2 inch, then connect with a straight line. I'm going to measure my bust circumference divide by 4 on the chest line, and then connect with my armhole curve. Next is to come over to the waist. You are going to impute your actual waist divide by 4 with a broken line. After that, you measure your hip circumference divide by 4 and you connect. Next, we'll go over to the waistline and contour our zipper line by 1 inch. Then connect it to the neckline. You contour by 1 inch and connect to the neckline, and connect back to the hem line. So this is my zipper contour line. So we are going to cut out the dotted parts. So the next thing now is to create the corset. So I'm using a red marker. So from the center back, you can see I came in by 2 inches from the center back. Just mark 2 inches and connect your corset. You can actually make it 2.5 inches or 1.5 if you want. So this is where my eyelet is going to sit. So now we are going to trace out what we have on the corset. But before we do that, I'm going to come down by 2 inches. That 2 inches is for the net, okay, the net that will carry the zipper. I came down by 2 inches. It depends on how low you actually want this to be. So I use 2 inches. You can also connect to the waistline. It must not be 2 inches down. It can also be on the waistline. So now on that chest line, I'll come down by 1/2 inch. Remember, we recreated the armhole, so it matches exactly to what we have. So you just draw a straight line to complete that part, and redraw your armhole as well. So now the corset is ready. So the next thing we want to do now, where we have the red markers, so I will come in by 1 inch to snatch my waist. Come in by 1 inch and snatch your waist for the corset. So I'm using red marker for the corset part. So wherever you see the red marker, that is the corset for you. So that area is our corset, the inner corset lacing. So now the next thing we will do is to come up by 1.5 inch to match up with what we have at the front and connect. So now we are going to trace out the corset. Where we have the red marker, I'm going to trace everything out, as you can see. So you can see we are making a dartless corset. So there's no dart because of the bra cup. So now we are going to cut it out accordingly. And this is the pattern we are going to use to cut the inner corset. So I'm going to place it to be sure it matches exactly with what I cut out. So here are my eyelets. So I'm going to indicate the upper piece as well. So next is to cut out what we have on this pattern. So I'll just follow the red lines for the front, because that is where the corset is going to start from. So I'll now cut out what I have accordingly. You cut out the yoke line as well. So I'm going to set the front aside and start cutting the back corset. So when you are cutting the back corset, we've already traced out the corset itself. Now I'm going to cut from the black line. That is for the mesh. The mesh we are using, you cut out through the black lines. So you can see our patterns are very much ready right now. So this is how it's going to look, and the inner corset will be inserted under it. So when we start sewing, you will see how this will be placed. So the next thing we are going to do now is to cut out the corset. So I want to make use of a 3-part corset. So I placed my pepper on fold and placed my bra cup on fold too. So just watch how I traced it out, and I'm going to use it to create the 3-part corset which we are going to use to cover this bra cup. So I'm going to take the measurement of 2.5 inch from the up. So just mark 2.5 inch on the folded edge and on the side, and connect it with a straight line. So once you have done that, that means you have your 3-part corset. So I'll just go ahead and cut out my 3-part corset accordingly. So when you open it up, you have your corset cover. So you can see it. So now I'm going to label them 1, 2, 3, and then make indications of your marks. Very important, the side, the center, front, and all of that. So I've cut it out on fabric. I added my seam allowances. So I placed the first one on fold, but I opened it right now. So I added half inch all around. The yoke, I added half inch all around, everything half inch, and I made notches on the upper pieces, as you can see. So that is it. So next is the back. I've cut out the back and I added half inch, but the zipper part I added 1 inch for stitching. So I added 1 inch on that part to stitch, and I added 1 inch on the sides. So that is it. Now we are going to concentrate on the corset, to stitch the corset. So I'll head over to the machine now. I'll take off all my patterns. So the way it is right here, I'm going to match 2 and 3 together like that. So this part can actually be very confusing, but I will advise you make those notches. It will help you when you are sewing them together so that it does not confuse you. So I always like to match them together the way you see me match right here. So once I'm done matching them, I'll go over to the machine and stitch at 0.5 inch. So after stitching that part, I'm going to bring it back to trim out. So you just trim the excess seam allowances so it relaxes on the cup very well. So this part I'm trimming out is 2 and 3, which I stitched together. So I'm done stitching. I'm going to place it on the first one, secure with my pin at that notch. So the notch area shows the upper part. So wherever I have the notch area and the side, I'll match them accordingly. So I'll go over to the machine and stitch at half an inch too. So after stitching, I'm going to also trim that part out. So I will trim it very well so I don't have bulky parts. So the next thing is to mold my cup using my tailor's ham. So I'll just place it and use my piece of fabric with steam and mold it very well so it relaxes nice and flat. So I'm going to use it to cover my cup. So make sure you pin and relax all the pieces so it relaxes very well on the cup. So I'll go over to stitch it right now, but before I do that, I trim out those darts. So I'll go and stitch. I'm done stitching both the fabric and the cup for the lining. So I'm going to stitch my cup right away. I'm stitching my cup at half an inch. So I'll just go ahead to the machine. This is how I'm going to stitch it round for both of them. I'll repeat the same thing for the lining piece. So the lining cup does not have the bra cup. So here I'm done. So I'm going to place the necklines together. So you stitch the necklines at 1/2 inch. Make sure you match all the seam lines. So once you are done matching the seam lines, I'm also going to stitch the sides, leaving only the under part open. So you create your notches accordingly. So then you go ahead and flip your seams on the lining and top stitch. Give it a good press. I use my hemming gum at the upper piece before I press down. So I'm going to fold it again and sew the sides like I earlier said. So I'm going to close the sides at 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to turn it around. So I'm going to give it a good press too, so it relaxes well. So this is what I got. Next is to create a boning channel. So I'm using a particular boning channel design. I'm using a nylon boning. So I just want to measure my nylon boning. Whatever I have, I'll just take away 1.5 inch from it. So I'm using the nylon boning first to mark on the lines. I'm marking by the side, so by the time I stitch them, I'll have them exactly at the center. So those lines I marked now, I'll use my zipper foot first. So make sure you sew this with your zipper foot if you are using this boning method. So I'll just stitch on those lines, including the lining. So after that is done, I'm going to insert my nylon boning. So this is the method I'm using. You can use your Regling method, you can use any method of boning, but I love to use this method. So I'm now, after inserting, I'm going to sew by the side of the boning. So when I sew by the side of the boning, it keeps my boning in place. So I will make sure I stretch it the way I'm stretching it, so there's no rough edges at the back. So I'm stitching both the lining and the fabric, everything together. So once I get to the end of it, I'm going to lock. So you see how I turn and top stitch. I'll lock the boning. So I've done that for all of them. For the back, I'm going to take off the back and lay them right side to right side. So the right side to right side, I'll stitch up and down like that. So I'm stitching everything all together, and I'm going to turn it around. So make sure you top stitch the upper piece before you sew the sides. I stitch at 1/2 inch for all of them. So I'm measuring my boning now because I want to create my eyelet spacing. So I'm using the same method I used in the first one for this. So I will insert it at the edge of the eyelet spacing. Make sure it gets to the end. And from the bottom, I'm going to use my zipper foot to stitch. So I'll now stitch from down to the upper piece. So once I'm done stitching that one, I've already created the eyelet spacing for my corset. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to lock it up. Make sure you lock it up so it does not slip out. So I'm going to measure 1 inch from that part. You measure 1 inch, 1 inch like that, and draw a line and stitch on that 1 inch. So once you stitch on that 1 inch, it will create the casing for the next nylon boning. So I'm going to get my other nylon boning, and I'll also insert it by the side too. So make sure you insert it well before you stitch. I'll also stitch by the side as well. So once you stitch at that side, you've already created the eyelet space for the corset. So I've done that, and this is what I got for all of them. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to use my bias to finish up the under corset. But before that, I would like to stitch the tulle. So I'm going to stitch the tulle which I've cut. So for the tulle, I have 4 pieces of it, 2 for right and 2 for left. So I'll stitch 1/2 inch on the neckline, and the front piece of the tulle is 2 pieces because it's on fold. So after stitching, I'm going to cut or trim out the neckline, just like you do in your yoke corset. So I'll now turn it the other way and give it a mild press. So I will give it a mild press right now. So next is to also sew the sides of this. So I've stitched the sides and I'm also reducing the seams. So make sure you reduce the seams. If you are working with two fabric, it's good you reduce their seams, but don't cut off the seam, the stitches. So I'll now turn it around. That is the next thing I'm going to do. I'll gently turn it around to the right side. So after that, I'll also give it a mild press. So the next thing is to sew the shoulder seam line. I'm going to put it together, the three of them. I'll use one to wrap it up. Then I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch like that and reduce the seams. Don't forget to reduce the seams on the shoulder seam line after you are done stitching. It makes that shoulder seam line very, very neat. So this is what I have. Next is to pin what I have on the down part and stitch. So I'm done stitching the yoke line right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is to wrap up the under corset using our bias. So I cut out a piece of bias. So now I'm going to measure my basque. If you are making use of a basque, put your tape on the under bust. My under bust measurement is 14 and my waistline is 17, but I came down by 2 inches. Remember, on the waist I came down by 2 inches. So I'm going to also come down by 2 inches from the waistline so it matches with the back. So that is what the line I'm making now, so it matches with the back. Then from that line, I will now design my backs at the center front. So just go ahead and create whatever design you want to create for this corset. So this is what I got. So I came down by 5 inches from that 2 inches line. So you can make it lower, you can make it deeper. It all depends. So my skirt is ready. I finished sewing my skirt with my lining. So I'll place my skirt on fold so I'll be able to mark out what I marked on the corset. So the first thing I'm going to do now, I place it at 17 inches. That is my waistline, and I cut out 2 inches. So remember, it was 17 as our waist and we came down by 2 inches. So that is what I did on the skirt piece. So I'll now mark my backs at 5. Then I'm going to connect it to the 2 inches which I will be cutting off. Of course, you know how to go about the inbuilt corset. This is not the main purpose of this tutorial, but I just need to show you in case you are a beginner here. So I've cut out the backs. You can see what I have. It has the same shape we have on the corset. So I'm now going to stitch the lining and the fabric together and fix it or sew it from that backs line, following the backs line. So I'll just go to my machine and stitch. So this is what I have as my backs line. So that the front piece is ready, the full front is ready, and this is the back piece. So for the back piece, I've already stitched the center back, everything with my lining. So the next is to match it with my tulle, and I'm going to sew at 0.5 inch. So but I'll come down by 2 inches. Remember, this skirt was taken from the waistline, so I have to remove that 2 inches, which is the lower waistline I'm working with. So I'll now cut out 2 inches. So if your tulle is starting exactly at the waistline, you don't need to cut out. So now I'm going to sew my tulle. I will sew it on the skirt piece. So I'm going to align it from the zipper line to the side line and stitch at 1/2 inch. So you can see what I got right now. So that part is ready. The next thing I'm going to do is to bring back the corset, the inner lacing corset, and I'm going to align it from the chest line. So just use your pin and secure it. So I'm going to stitch on it to hold it on, but I'll first pin it from that chest line. So after pinning this side, I'm sure I've aligned it. Then I'm going to also bring back the other corset piece and insert it on the other side below it like that and secure with your pin. So I've already stitched on it and kept it in place. So the next is to bring the corset and lay it right side to right side. Then I stitch your 1 inch. So after stitching, this is what I got, and this is the inner lacing corset. So I'm going to sew my zip right away. So I'm done sewing my zip, and this is what I got. So next is to pin the 1/2 inch yoke line. So you can drape this on the body, or you can just pin 1/2 inch, because if we are stitching it, it's still 1/2 inch we are going to stitch. So I'll just stitch on it with my needle and thread. Because I'm using an applique for this, that is why I'm doing this. So of course most designs now come with appliques, so you can just go ahead and stitch it, and it makes it easy for you. So I'll now go ahead and place my appliques on it, and that is how we'll come to the end of this tutorial. So I believe you learned a lot from this class. So if you are new to this channel, please kindly subscribe and turn on your notification bell. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.